This is the chart that I use to help me plan. It goes step by step in my thought process. This is just an overview of what the plan looks like, and I'm going to break it down on each slide. The first thing I do is I go into the hub and I look at the curriculum map and I see how many days that they're asking me to teach each standard. And then I see what mathematical practices are also included in that standard. Then I take a look at what the standard actually is asking the students to do, so I can understand what the depth of the learning is. And then I also look at how the district has broken down the targets, so I can see what I need to be teaching for each specific lesson. Because sometimes Go Math will group things together that the learning targets want us to pull into separate lessons. Next, I look into the Go Math book and the table of contents, and it breaks down the standard per each lesson. So I kind of try to judge how many lessons I'm going to need per standard based on how many days that the district is giving us to teach it. And based on the district's timeline, sometimes you have to add lessons or maybe take one lesson and spread it out for a couple days. And sometimes the lessons don't necessarily match the standard, so you won't use that lesson at all. So you'll need to think about what you will use in place of that day. This is my thought process on paper. I just put the standard on the top and list how many days for that standard, and then I start trying to figure out what lessons I'm going to teach. So when I put an A or a B beside a lesson, that means I'm spreading that lesson out in 2 days. So I may teach the skill the one day and the next day followed up with word problems. That way it's taken that rigor up higher. Then there's some days where that standard may be broken down into multiple days. Like there's one that's not listed here, but it's one lesson broken into 4 separate lessons based on the learning target and standard. Once I have it written down on paper, then I map it out on a calendar so I can share it with my team, and that way the whole team is on the same page. So once we have the dates all situated, I go look at the Go Math correlation chart. You can find that online at Think Central. It's the FSA version, which is more in line with the state testing than the test from the Go Math book. So after finding that information on the chart, I go look at the test questions. This helps me to see exactly what I'm supposed to be teaching, and I also can make sure that the test question actually fits the intent of the standard. Sometimes you have to tweak the question just a little bit to make it fit the standard exactly. And then I also use those questions when I'm modeling the lesson, when I'm having the students practice, when I'm making my task cards, and when I'm making my FSA practice questions. So when I go into the teaching book, the teaching manual, I go ahead and look for teaching for depth, so I can see like examples or ideas of ways to teach it to the depth of the standard. And I'm also looking to see if there's any important vocabulary that I need to make sure my students know. Then I use the engage part, but I use the number 2 section where it says teach and talk. I will use a picture in the PowerPoint, but I won't give the kids the question. Like they'll have the word problem, but they won't have the question that goes with it. They're going to have to come up with the question. They will come up, you want them to ask math questions and try to push math vocabulary, the mathematical practice questions also, not so much science questions like how did the cubes get there? Why are the cubes green? Those are like non-essential questions, so we want to steer them away from those things versus like, how many cubes are there? Will we add all the cubes? How can we model this? Will we add or subtract? Will we add and subtract? How many 10s? How many 1s? How can we write that in expanded form? So you're getting the kids so used to asking questions within partner talking and during your lessons that they are starting to be able to come up with questions when you pose a picture in a word problem with no question attached to it. So they're coming up with the questions themselves. This just gets their brains going, and then as they are solving that problem, then you are able to go around and ask for the higher order questions that are aligned with that standard and mathematical practice, and then you can start clearing up misconceptions and then keep that in your mind when you're getting ready to teach. I do use the teacher manual to help me find some questions. Sometimes I do reword them so that way they are higher order, or that I'm using the math STEM questions that the district provides for us. Even though they give you an example here, I try to use the test question as my model so that way they're seeing it the way they're going to be tested on it. I also use that same question from the test. I change the numbers, change the names. If it's add, we may do add and subtract. It just depends on what it's asking you, but you just tweak it to fit your lesson. But I make the one for the teaching modeling time, and then I also make 2 for the partners to work on. When the students are solving the problem, I typically use the Rally Coach strategy. This is exactly how it works. It's just 1 pencil and 1 word problem or task card, and they're working through the problem. And as they're working, then they should be asking questions, they should be checking their partner, they should be giving good feedback to the partner. I really like the way that you model the problem. The problem is correct, and making sure they're using correct vocabulary. Then when it's time for the students to work, we don't use the workbook pages. I use the FSA test to create task cards, and I try to differentiate them. So maybe the lower group is working on just the basic skill, where your high kids are working on a more of a word problem type things with higher numbers. Just anything that's going to mimic those test questions and test stems. I do create FSA practice questions that I print out on color paper and put in sleeves, and they can be reused over and over. It looks fun for the kids, even though it's just basic skills that we're already practicing in class. It's just a different way to practice those skills and just do them at the teacher table so that you have a better eye and grasp of what the students are getting. This is where I find the elaboration section. I use the go deeper question most of the time. And then again, I use those STEM questions and the higher order questions to add to this section. And to get your writing across the curriculum in math time, I have the students use this poster to write about a prompt. I usually pull the prompt from one of the higher order questions that are in the Go Math book. Sometimes I change the numbers, names, tweak it a little bit, but that's pretty much where I get those from. Once I have the prompts created, I usually put them on address labels and then just stick them on notebook paper, and then they can create their plan. They're going to show me their work, and then they're going to justify their answer. Again, this goes with writing across the curriculum. This is what I usually post up on my walls for math to show that we are writing, thinking, and justifying versus just putting up a worksheet or task card work. My kids did this in 4th grade, 1st grade, and we're doing it this year in 2nd grade. And like I said, it's just a great way to get your writing across the curriculum on your evaluation. Well, I hope this presentation is something that's going to be able to help you out to lesson plan. If you have any further questions, definitely let me know. I just kind of threw this together really quick so that you would have an idea and you had visuals to go with it, something to refer back to if you needed it. I'm here anytime if you need anything. Thanks. Have a good day.